The following program is part of a college course. These telecourses allow you to earn college credits at home. For more information, contact a college or university near you.
Animals sense and react to their environment in a variety of ingenious ways. To do this, they must process vast amounts of information through a complex network of cells we call the nervous system.
It all starts with a single nerve cell talking to another nerve cell, but of course there are billions of these. And it is the interconnectedness of these billions of nerve cells that gives rise to our thoughts, our passions, our plans.
While animals may differ, they all transmit information in the same way, through the intricate pathways of the neural connection. In order to survive, all animals must detect and respond to the world around them. Animals collect information about their environment through specialized cells and nerve endings called sensory receptors. Mechanoreceptors detect pressure. Photoreceptors detect light. And chemoreceptors detect chemicals for taste or smell. These sensitive instruments operate in a wide range of environments, even underwater.
Lobsters have been shown to possess extremely sensitive and interesting chemoreceptors. These are located usually at the tips of the antennules of the lobster, and they're able to detect very small or minute quantities of chemicals over quite a long distance. When these molecules are received by a neighboring lobster, they cause specific behavioral responses, and these are used for chemical communication, for social interactions.
Whether in the antennule of a lobster or the taste buds of a human, chemoreceptors function almost identically. Chemicals provide what scientists call a sensory stimulus, a physical change in the environment which is detected by the nervous system. While sensory receptors often function in similar ways, their sensitivity may vary. For instance, humans can detect heat and cold fairly well, but consider the thermoreceptors of a humble snake.
Some snakes have small pits on either side of their head, and in those pits are specialized nerve endings which detect temperature differences as small as a hundredth of a degree. So these snakes are actually able to localize an animal such as a mouse, so they can aim themselves at the running temperature, hot temperature of the mouse, and strike. And this is all because they have extremely sensitive thermodetectors in their head region.
While sensors often differ between animals, one is so crucial to survival, all animals share it: pain.
Nociceptors are pain receptors which are located all over the body of animals, and they are free nerve endings in the skin. But there are so many of them, and they're extremely fine, that pressing or causing pain anywhere on the body's surface will result in a sensation, of course. And these occur in all animals as far as we know.
Sensing pain, pleasure, heat, or light, all sensory receptors work in the same way, by transforming physical stimuli into electrochemical signals. These signals are then transmitted by nerve cells, often called neurons.
Neurons are found throughout the body, and they have the cell body with dendrites, which are the input to the cell, to the neuron. And then it has, of course, a long process called an axon, and the terminal end of the axon is the end of the neuron.
Neurons transmit the different signals of the nervous system through electrical impulses called action potentials.
An action potential is a momentary change in the voltage across a neuron. All cells in the body are surrounded by a cell membrane. And across the cell membrane of every cell, there's a voltage called the membrane potential.
At rest, neurons maintain a voltage difference by balancing opposing forces across their membrane. Using ATP energy, the neuron pumps out sodium ions while it pumps in potassium ions. The membrane keeps sodium out, but potassium can move freely through channel proteins. As the concentration of potassium builds inside, diffusion begins to force these positive ions out, leaving the cell interior with a negative charge. Soon, this voltage difference grows strong enough to attract some ions back in, until the cell achieves a restless balance.
When nothing happens to the cell, it's at rest, and the voltage across the membrane potential, is constant. We call that the resting potential. Now, in the case of a sensory neuron, some stimulus occurs, and this can cause a change in the resting potential.
When an outside stimulus opens channels in the neuron's membrane, sodium ions pour in and depolarize a portion of the cell. This action potential opens channels in an adjacent area of the membrane, allowing more sodium to enter. Like a row of falling dominoes, the nerve signal radiates down the axon. Each action potential also opens gates on potassium channels. As these positive ions exit, they repolarize the cell, which closes the sodium gates and restores the cell's membrane potential.
The cell itself has a potential across it of minus 70 millivolts, but when sodium comes in, making it more positive, it becomes minus 70, minus 65, minus 60, minus 55, and so forth. We call that raise in potential a depolarization. During an action potential, sodium channels open up and allow sodium to come into the cell. Slightly delayed from that, potassium channels open up and allow potassium to go out of the cell. Every time a potassium ion leaves, positive charge is taken out of the cell, leaving the cell inside more negative. This process is called repolarization. An action potential can occur hundreds of times per second. Okay? We're talking about a tremendous rate of action potentials.
As animals become more complex, they need to transmit action potentials with greater efficiency. In vertebrates, a fatty insulator called myelin helps speed things along.
Myelin is a strictly vertebrate invention. In the sensory nerves, for example, myelin consists of a Schwann cell, a specialized cell, which wraps itself around the axon of peripheral nerves. The function of myelin is to increase the speed of propagation of action potentials along an axon. It's a very good electrical insulator, so it does not conduct electricity or ion flow, it does not pass through it.
Along an axon, the myelin is separated by an exposed gap or node. In essence, action potentials jump from node to node, allowing for speedy reactions.
In the case of invertebrate animals, which don't have myelin, the way they achieve rapid velocity of propagation is they have larger and larger axons, because we know that the axon diameter is directly related to the velocity of propagation. So for example, the classic case is the squid giant axon. When the squid is in danger, this axon fires the muscles around the mantle of the squid, and it moves the squid backwards very rapidly, and it removes it from danger.
Whether pain or heat or light, all physical sensations begin as electrical signals racing through the nervous system. Still, these impulses must travel in single steps, from one cell to the next.
Polo is like hockey. If you took hockey and every other teammate was 1,000 pounds, that'd be like polo, because you're sitting on a 1,000-pound horse, and he's completely innocent of the fact he does only what you ask. So if you get good performance out of him, it's really a high for you. I want Robert to take out the next one.
Right.
And George.
When polo players want to fine-tune their game, they come to Kathy Batchelor. As a player and coach, she's mastered the art of this fast-action sport that requires split-second communication between nerve cells.
When an athlete is exerting herself or himself, many different nerves are firing to control the movement, to control the thought processes. The blood pressure will be going up, the heart rate will be going up. The body is stressed during heavy physical exercise.
The faster it gets and the more exciting it gets, it just pushes you to the edge. You have to stay on edge to be good at this game, and you have to let your reflexes take over a lot.
During this level of activity, millions of action potentials fire across the cells of the nervous system. As they travel, these impulses must cross gaps between neurons called synapses.
When a nerve impulse fires down an axon, it eventually reaches a synapse, the narrow gap between two neurons. Here, the action potential triggers the release of special chemicals that quickly diffuse across the synapse. These chemicals, called neurotransmitters, bind to protein receptors on the adjacent neuron. This opens channels which trigger a new action potential. In this way, the body transmits impulses between the many cells of our nervous system.
Nerves work by electrical impulses, and so if you stimulate a nerve, an electrical impulse will go down the nerve and will induce neurotransmitter release at synapse. A neurotransmitter is usually a small molecule which is released from nerves and which is used for communication between nerves. There's lots and lots of different neurotransmitters which have been found. So there's the classical neurotransmitters, such as adrenaline, and then there are the peptide neurotransmitters like the endorphins, or sometimes we call them neuromodulators. The difference here is that a neurotransmitter is usually considered not to be able to travel very far and only works in the synapse, whereas a neuromodulator may travel to different neurons away from the synapse.
One group of neuromodulators, called endorphins, helps athletes perform during heavy exercise by suppressing pain.
At least we know in long-distance runners, endorphins are released, and these runners, they become somewhat analgesic. They can't feel pain after their long runs.
Endorphin molecules bind with receptors at the synapse, blocking the neurotransmitters which transfer pain. These same receptors accept another pain-killing chemical, morphine. Kathy Batchelor has experienced the effects of both these painkillers. During a game just a year ago, she fell with her horse in a dramatic accident.
My horse misput one foot, and that was enough just to slam. We're doing 30, 35 miles an hour, and she slammed to the ground. So there was no escaping her. From what I understand, I hit the ground so hard I literally bounced back up. And they had to come with a helicopter because I had no response.
To stop the pain of the injuries, Kathy received doses of morphine. Surprisingly, scientists have found an interesting comparison in morphine and endorphins. two molecules similar enough to fit in the same molecular glove, but distinct enough to cause differing effects.
The morphine, it's a good feeling as far as it takes the pain away, and that's kind of a blessing. You look forward to that, but you feel like everything's kind of going in a cloud.
Morphine will affect the gut. Morphine changes blood pressure. It decreases blood pressure and decreases respiration. So morphine has a very wide variety of effects on the central nervous system. Morphine is a very rigid structure. It doesn't have much flexibility in the molecule, whereas the endorphins are very flexible molecules. They can form many different shapes. And by playing with the shape of the endorphins, you can actually get a similar shape to how the morphine looks. Well, the current work of our lab is involved in trying to understand what happens to the receptor when morphine or endorphins activate the receptor. What are the adaptive processes which occur, which lead to tolerance and possibly tolerance after addiction? So we think here that morphine may be eluding some of the regulatory mechanisms that the endorphins would trigger.
By probing deeper into the chemistry of the synapse, scientists may yet unravel the mysteries of pain and pleasure. But for Kathy Batchelor, the challenges remain on the polo field.
I work out per day as many hours as I can, horseback and so forth, so that I can get back. But I have a problem with the muscle reflexes. I'm missing about 10% of me still. It's very important that I have to get back at it and get back into it. That's my whole life.
The signals that transmit the input of our senses jump from synapse to synapse as they speed through the nervous system. But in order for us to react, this sensory information must be integrated and translated into action. These peace officers are being bombarded with sensory information. Sights, sounds, even internal information race through their nervous systems. Their lives and the lives of others depend on how they integrate this information and respond.
Okay, stop. Empty your weapon onto the ground. Holster an empty weapon. Pick up your...
The amazing thing about the human body is its capacity to integrate information from a whole variety of different places within the body. You're getting information from the muscles, from the joints, from the heart. All of this information has to be sensed and coordinated and integrated, and then the appropriate response has to be sent back out to the particular effector organ: skeletal muscle, heart, kidney, lung. It's an amazing operation to be able to coordinate millions of bits of information simultaneously and make decisions or make responses within a split second.
As remarkable as the human nervous system is, an untrained individual cannot perform well without first learning the basics.
Grip that I showed you. Okay, now bring it up into two-armed shooting position here. When a new student fires a gun, they are not used to the recoil of it, and they sometimes overreact, and they actually move their feet backwards to regain their balance, to capture himself. Again.
Controlling the gun while maintaining balance involves many different parts of the nervous system.
Well, the nervous system is divided into two primary components: the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. The central nervous system is composed of both the brain and the spinal cord, and the peripheral nervous system can actually be subdivided into the somatic and into the autonomic nervous system. The somatic nervous system is primarily involved with the contraction of muscles, skeletal muscles, and overall body movement. The autonomic nervous system is involved with coordinating the function of internal organs.
All coordination, no matter how simple, involves the central nervous system, even a basic reflex.
A reflex, in its strictest definition, is a response which requires no conscious thought. If we look at the stretch reflex in the arm, when the tricep is stretched, That sends this electrical information to the spinal cord. Within the spinal cord, that electrical information is transferred to another cell body of a neuron, which sends information right back out to the tricep, causing the tricep to contract.
Reflexes like these in the somatic nervous system help us react quickly to events of the outside world. At the same time, autonomic reflexes are hard at work responding to the body's internal cues.
Autonomic reflexes are very similar in their organization to the somatic reflexes. That is, there is an afferent limb, which is sensing some physiological variable, pH of the blood pressure, the concentration of oxygen in the blood. These are all being monitored by sensors. The information is carried into the central nervous system, up into the brain. There, the information is integrated, and a signal is sent back out to an effector organ. So, for example, my blood pressure is being regulated. It sends information to my brain. That information is sent back out to the heart, and it causes a change in heart rate that would help to maintain my blood pressure.
Whether responding to internal or external changes, all reflexes follow the same general pattern. A sensory receptor detects a stimulus, sending an action potential along a neuron to the spinal cord or brain. After one or more synapses, the impulse travels out through a different neuron to the muscle or organ which responds. But not all fast reactions are reflexes.
In the strictest physiological sense, reflexes are not thought about, but there are a series of motor activities and behaviors which can be learned over time, which can result in very quick action.
Move out of the way!
For example, a police officer learning to distinguish between a criminal or an innocent bystander, in which they have to make instantaneous responses. This may look like a reflex, but it's actually brought about by practicing over and over again in a training course situation.
Unholster your weapon. Armed 211 suspect behind that door. Don't worry about any of this. Go get him.
What we know as learning requires changes in the neural connections of the body's central nervous system.
Learning is what enables us to benefit from experiences that we have. What enables us to learn and remember is a change that occurs in neurons in the brain that communicate with each other. And when one nerve cell talks to the other nerve cell, a change takes place so that it's easier the next time around for that nerve cell to talk to the other nerve cell. And the changes that take place at the connections between those nerve cells, we believe, constitute the physiological or the biochemical basis of memory.
The quick reactions of an experienced officer are the result of training synapses throughout the central nervous system, especially those in the body's master control center, the brain.
The human brain is composed of 3 major divisions. In the hindbrain, the medulla and pons control basic survival functions such as breathing and heart rate, while the cerebellum helps control balance and muscle coordination. The midbrain responds reflexively to many sensory inputs and relays the information to more complex components. The forebrain includes the hypothalamus and the thalamus, which coordinate subconscious responses and relay impulses to the cerebrum. Here, complex neural functions allow us to sense, react, remember, and reason.
To meet the challenges of the outside world, each part of the brain must perform its assigned role in coordinating the body's many functions.
Very good.
In the medulla and the pons, we have the neurons controlling heart rate, blood pressure, breathing rate, to ensure that there's enough oxygen being supplied to the muscles during this activity. The cerebellum is involved in coordinating the smooth muscle movements that are necessary as the person is running or is pointing at a particular target. The midbrain is going to be primarily involved with coordinating head and neck movements in response to visual and auditory stimuli. This person is being active, their body temperature might start to rise a little bit. And the hypothalamus is monitoring that rise in body temperature and causing appropriate changes. The thalamus is a relay station that sends all the information that's coming from the periphery up into the brain, up into the higher regions of the brain. The cerebrum, of course, is where a lot of the motor activity is being generated in the motor cortex. Auditory stimuli are going to also be interpreted within the cerebral cortex.
Scientists have long wondered how such a small organ can perform such remarkable tasks. Despite considerable study and some progress, there is much we don't know.
The brain is a complex and mysterious organ, and it is undoubtedly the most complex organ in the known universe. But we can't be daunted by it. We can record the electrical impulses of cells and relate that to behavior. We can record the chemical activity of nerve cells and relate that to behavior. We can examine anatomical changes that result from learning and memory and relate that to behavior. We have to be innovative to invent techniques to explore things that are right here, right within our brains. And the interesting thing is, we use our brains to study our brains.
The complexity of the human brain is unparalleled in the animal kingdom. But while animals may differ, the cells of their nervous systems all share the same basic purpose: to sense, integrate, and respond. In this way, animals survive the challenges of an ever-changing world.